moltes gràcies.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, first of all. I'm going to speak in Spanish. So I would like to start this roundtable focusing, because in the audience there are a lot of teachers, and they are here to listen to you and to talk about the new role of teachers in these ongoing changes in the education systems. So what is expected from teachers? For example, Gareth, to start with you. So when a teacher wants to start to use microbit, which are the skills that you recommend, or what do they have to learn? Which is the type of learning that they should be doing?
Very much for that question. I think let's firstly say that teachers are under a lot of pressure. In the current classroom, the teacher pipeline is a really difficult problem at the moment, keeping teachers in the profession and paying them enough so they're there. So there's so many problems, and the teachers are bearing the brunt of the post-pandemic catch-up. Schools across the world are still struggling with that. So it sometimes feels slightly difficult to say what we want teachers to do because they're up against so much already. But we as the foundation really see the teachers as our route through to changing the people that are taking those first steps with technology. So in terms of what we see the teacher's role, the teacher traditionally was was a communicator of knowledge, was a broadcaster of knowledge. And with project-based learning, with the microbit, with getting hands-on, with new technology, we want those teachers to feel comfortable with failing and not knowing everything. Part of using technology is getting it wrong sometimes and working together in a collaborative way to be able to solve those problems. So that really sort of is what we want teachers to move towards, and also to think about using technology in a cross-curricular way. The microbit is really, and all physical computing devices are really well sort of set up to be able to be used across science, maths, arts, sport. So how do we get those linkages happening in a better way?
Jim, estaba pensando realmente.
So Jim, about Gareth says about demanding things to teachers, they are under enough pressure, and we mentioned the World Economic Forum, and one of the jobs of the future is the role of these new teachers and the trainers of these new teachers. So you're a mechanical engineer, and some teachers say, do we need to be engineers? So how are these trainings going to be? Tell us.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, I think, so for Foldscope, I think, in order for people to use our tool effectively, they really have to understand, how it works and the intended, context that it's used in for learning about either life science or different things where you can learn from the microstructure. I think, just providing that to teachers as a tool is not enough. They, teachers really need to have, I guess, the right backgrounds to implement it and the right training. But like we were saying, I think putting the burden on the teacher too much is not really a great approach. We really need to provide them with the tools that they need to implement everything properly. So, I think in the US, just to give a context, there's been a large shift towards using digital technologies. So, I think in many cases, the remote learning has become important. And so for our particular case, some schools are relying on us to help with some of the initial training for using our tools, and I think that's important for them. And also just being able to understand what they look at. So we try to provide activity guides and lesson plans to give a context for that, and also kits that give all the tools that they need to try to make their job easier, so that they're not learning something entirely new as they're using our tools.
Se dice también que este nuevo maestro.
And it is also said that this has to act as a guide, right? To support the student, not so much to somehow impose a certain teaching. It's some sort of a guide. In your project, this was the way you operated, right? Implementing this tool outside the academic environment. You acted as a guideline, didn't you? Absolutely. So in the case of our orchestra, we focus the project on non-formal educational system, right? In the formal educational system, there is a curricula, a program to be achieved, and of course, students have to develop certain skills or acquire certain knowledge. In our case, we just orient and guide students on the grounds of their own reality. In many countries, in Latin America, the education system aims at being similar to developed countries, but they forget that some people are left behind. And that's why there is such a big inequality gap between one school and another. In one of the presentations, it's been said clearly that a boy or a girl who is born in a poor environment will never have the same opportunities than those who are born in middle class or higher class families, right, and who attend a private school. So our aim is not to act as a super top private school, but to guide students at risk of social exclusion. Eugenia, before we said how important it is to provide tools. In your case, you work in network, and this is also a way to help trainers and teachers. Do you perceive any differences between schools in poor countries or in northern countries? Are there any significant differences between developing countries and developed countries? While Fabio was speaking, I was thinking about how unfair it is to put such a burden in schools, because what I have learned in the last years working with scientists and schools is that both schools and scientists from different parts of the world, different countries, with different social and economical backgrounds, and oftentimes we realize that both scientists and schools point at what they consider to be the best model, yet there is a clear bias. There is a clear perception bias on the value of local knowledge, on indigenous knowledge, and there's also a bias regarding the local communities, and oftentimes local communities are imposed an external model on how their schools should work and should operate. And we believe this to be unfair. We have realized that sometimes you have like a scientific expert in the field of, I don't know, sustainability, who offer a lecture in a school, and these super top experts are also fed with ideas in these schools which are new, that they had never heard of. And all of a sudden in a developing country they realize that sustainability is perceived differently. It's not better or worse, it's just different. And the other way around, right? I was discussing with a girl before, and I told her that once I met a scientist in Nigeria who went to Austria to offer a lecture. And after the lecture, the students from Austria said, I didn't know that in Nigeria they carried out this groundbreaking research. And, well, yeah, this is what the whole thing is about. In all countries, there are best practices and a great deal of added value. And, of course, the value can come from the school, the scientists. There's value and power everywhere. Now, regarding teaching the teachers, I always insist when I discuss with scientists on the importance of science dissemination. Teachers can also train scientists. Scientists must be open-minded, because formal knowledge per se sometimes is pointless if we do not know how to transfer knowledge, right? And oftentimes teachers have a great deal of knowledge when it comes to knowledge transfer. Absolutely excellent. And I believe what you mentioned makes sense. The uniformization of teaching methods can be negative, and the introduction of technology as a learning tool has pros and cons. There is a wide debate on the topic, right? And I would like to know your opinion. Here in Catalonia, there's a debate on the right balance, a difficult balance between the use of tablets, screens, and more like hands-on tools. What is the right balance between the use of technology in school and the use of other tools? Who would like to start? Gareth, would you like to start? I have started before by giving you the floor. Back to you.
Yeah, that's a really easy question. How do we use technology in schools, and what should be the balance? I think there's a lot of sort of either technology is going to save the world or technology is going to ruin the world, and I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. I think we have to ensure that we support teachers and give them the knowledge to make the right choices for their local context, rather than saying that you should use this or you should use that. I think that's really important. And I think also that with the rise of AI, for example, we should ensure that we are putting the right policies in place, but also the right regulation to ensure that that we protect children from the extremes of that technology. So ensuring that the children's rights and their data privacy are protected. So I think there is no right answer to what the level of technology is. I think it's what's right for the local context, but also ensuring that we ensure that teachers have got the knowledge and the support to make those right choices.
Jim, te voy a poner en un aprieto.
So Jim, now I'm gonna push you a little bit further. Here there is a general opinion in the media, etc., that in California, professionals who work in Silicon Valley, they bring their children to schools where they have a zero technology policy. Is this a fake news we have received here, or you coming from California can confirm this? Do super high-tech experts bring their children to non-tech schools? Thank you.
Well, I mean, there are policies, as you say, that are limiting the technology use in the classroom. I think certainly there, things like having your cell phone is, you can't have your cell phone in the classroom, things like that. There are, plenty of cases where they have the smart blackboard system, and they have, it's a very prevalent use of technologies for, doing remote sessions with the children from home. So in that sense, technology is present, but I think there is, there is some truth to the statement that the, I don't know about zero technology, but limitations on the technology use in the classrooms, just because I think the goal really is to try to minimize screen time and to try to keep, the students so that they're engaged and they're, really having the hands-on experience and the not missing out on the opportunities for communicating with their classmates and having, team-based experiences. That's really an important part of, I think, some of the, NGSS, these next generation standards, and one that's, they're trying to take seriously in California. Yeah.
A mí a veces me da la impresión de que quizás
Sometimes I have the impression that sometimes, I don't know what Fabio will think, sometimes the balance, there's a certain tendency or a certain pattern to manipulative learning that comes from the maker world that sometimes overcompensate the excess of a screen time. Do you think the balance can be there? Oh, by the way, answering to your previous question, last week I was in San Francisco. We played in San Francisco in a super exclusive school where the children of the Silicon Valley top executives study, and the director of the school, the principal of the school, told me the following. He said, imagine a school that costs $60,000 a year, per student that is, and they invite us, Paraguay music school, that is not even recognized by the Ministry of Education, a music school that publishes books like this. They say that they have a great deal to learn from us, right? So technology is a tool, of course, a fantastic tool, and we need to leverage technology, but we should never replace technology, or we should never replace, let's say, the human element by technology, because human principles are deeply rooted mainly in humans. So knowledge, when it's detached from values, is harmful because it will lead to information with no principles, with no values. So education is a very thin line, and we need to be careful. We need to use the necessary, we need to use the tools when they are valuable, but we shall never replace the human element by technology. Absolutely. And this is what they do in Technology Without Borders, which is placing humankind at the center. Absolutely. And I believe this is something that could, I could add this, maybe. Of course, values have to be at the core. At the same time, sometimes we run the risk of losing track, losing perspective when we allow humans to be replaced by technology. And again, boys and girls, young people today will need a great deal of creativity because they will have to compete against machines and artificial intelligence. So creativity will allow them to win the machines because, of course, AI and machine learning is based on what already exists. And even if the results obtained by AI looks creative, it is just a combination of already existing items, right? So the idea is not throwing a mic to students. The idea is to teach them how to explore so that they can come up with creative developments with microbytes or whatever. So it's all about looking for a solution so that between one thing and another we can save the future. So we're running out of time, and perhaps it's the right time to open for the Q&A so that the audience can share their remarks and doubts. I have a long list of question marks, so if no one wants to speak, don't worry, I will. So who would like to take the floor from the audience? There we go. Hello, and thank you very much. Thanks for the very interesting presentations. It's been said, but I have a doubt here. What do you do in the framework of your own projects to support teachers? You've talked about it, but how do you support teachers? It's clear that you support students as end beneficiaries, but what mechanisms or what strategies or programs have you set up to support teachers? Because here in Abacus and in Habilis, sometimes we consider that teachers are the category that needs the most support. So what is your take from your projects? Have you identified teachers as beneficiaries of your projects? Who would like to start?
So, yeah, I think teachers are at the heart of what we do. We see them as the facilitators that will help us have the impact. But they do need support. And I think the key that we found is that support needs to be over a long period of time. You cannot just, do a couple of webinars and provide them with some resources and then move away. They need continuing support to, as they move through. So we've used lots of different methods for doing that. So from, online professional development resources, projects, schemes of work, and then also working with local partners, so that the teachers have lots of different ways that they can use microbit and use technology. So people like Code.org and the Scratch Foundation, and obviously the work that's being done here in Catalonia. So we think that's there's no one size fits all. I think for me it's commitment over time to continue to support teachers. It's about having multiple ways that they can access training and support over that time. And also peer learning is really, really important. So how do we build a network of teachers that can then train other teachers? And that is sustainable in many ways.
Sorry. Peer learning, because one of the things that came over and over with the teachers that are involved in Lectures Without Borders was this interest in sharing with each other what they did with the students after lectures. So it is like what happens to the school once the lecture is gone. It was because of that we started trying to have a more long-term involvement with the schools, and also started creating workshops in which teachers learn or share with each other. And we don't have a scientist teaching to the teachers how to teach a subject. Is teachers sort of sharing what works for them, and also presenting to scientists what they would do if they needed to explain a concept like this, and try to create those spaces in which there's best practices taught by teachers to teachers, or by teachers to scientists. I'm sorry, I answered in English. It happens.
Jim, I don't know if you want to talk about
Yes,
the
please,
impact, maybe.
Sure, I'll say a few words. I was also going to comment on the peer learning as well. I think, as I mentioned in the talk earlier, we have our Microcosmos website, a community website where people share not only findings, but different methods that they used. And I think our original intention is that would serve as a platform for people to share lesson plans and methods that they're using in their educational practices. And I think that has happened to some extent, but not as much as we imagined. So we also have blogs where we have a teacher, someone who was formerly a teacher that's on our team, and so she's creating content that people can use, presenting that in the form of blogs, and also we're trying to launch some different kits and materials that I think are going to help support the teachers. So that's what we've done until now. I think there's always more you can do. There's always room for improvement, but that's I totally agree. Teachers are at the center of this, and something to be learned from. Just looking at other people's solutions and trying to find ways that work for your community, right? It's a very particular solution in all these cases.
Fabio.
Yeah. Bueno, lo nuestro, como
So in our case, as I said at the beginning, our process is an informal education process. Many teachers have learned in the framework of our project, of our program, that teaching can be offered in such a way that the knowledge can be transferred right away into the community. Let me give you an example. There are music teachers in Paraguay Well, we teach music, but we don't play music. So we, teach music, we have a certain amount of resources, but then we lack means to play music, to promote the existence of musicians. In the Cateura school, when a student has learned how to play music in the formal school, they realize that they don't play music out there, whereas all of a sudden in an informal orchestra we play in New York. So we try to broaden the scope of what being a teacher means. What us teachers teach has to be used by students in a creative way, otherwise it's pointless. Is there any other question from the audience? I would like to ask you about schools. You have the privilege of knowing schools from all around the world. Sorry. Yeah, we had a technical issue. We're back on track. Can you repeat?
Can you repeat it for the translator?
For you?
So sorry. The schools that you've been in touch with in the UK or in other countries, the educational transformation they have undergone, is it homogeneous? Is the transformation homogeneous, or are there inequalities? And what sort of schools are leading the process, the transformation process?
Yeah, I think there is obviously huge inequalities across the sort of rollout of education. If you look at the pandemic and the effect that that's had and the catch-up that's happening, I think the study in Holland showed that those from sort of lower socioeconomic backgrounds are way behind those from sort of middle class backgrounds because of the lack of technology in the home and the support that they had from home. So yes, there is a difference in the way that things are happening. I think what we try and do is work with organisations that focus on those areas of lowest socioeconomic deprivation. But what we find, strangely I think, is that, for example, the Next Gen project, which we're doing at the moment, in the sort of the schools with the lowest sort of indices of multiple deprivation and those with the highest, so the richest schools and the lowest schools are the ones that are most engaged. The sort of middling schools, which maybe haven't got as much focus or as much funding, are lagging behind slightly. So you've got a lot of work happening at the lower end and a lot of work because the richer schools can do it themselves. But in those middle schools, they seem to be this bit of a black hole of how that support is happening. So there needs to be something there. But yeah, there is a definite inequality in the way that things are being sort of rolled out.
Es interesante porque aquí también.
It's pretty interesting because we have exactly the same situation here in Spain. Eugenia, you've known many schools from all around the world. What is your big picture? How would you describe it? I think they operate at different speeds. At the same time, the most difficult thing is well, there are different socioeconomic levels, and I believe that the most difficult bit, the most important challenge from an educational perspective is that they run at different speed and that they head towards different directions. So it's difficult to find ways to be fair. So even if one tries to find a common curriculum with joint methods in all countries and in all regions from all around the world, they are trying to find like something that works for all. And at the same time, it's not like it takes longer to get. They just head towards different directions, and the main challenge from now on will be to find ways to offer similar opportunities for people who are not going to get to the same target. And it's not about asking everyone to get to the same point. So we're out of time. I would like to end by a quote. Teaching has not so much to do with transferring knowledge, but rather empowering students to turn them into happy and self-sufficient individuals. I believe we can all agree on that. Thank you.
No, a vosotros.